Hey there everyone, I am Jeff. This is Tabletop Toolbox and welcome to episode number 59 of the weekly
Ratchet. No, I said Ratchet. What is going on? Why does this sound so weird? Oh no, have I been replaced by an AI? I certainly hope not. That would be terrible. But maybe we'll talk about it here on the weekly Ratchet.
Hey there everyone. Oh, good. Okay, it's me. Hey folks, welcome back to the Weekly Ratchet. As always, I hope you've had a fantastic week of getting to play games with family and or friends. A couple things here real quick at the top of the show. The channel continues to grow. We have had a large number of new subscribers join us in the past couple of weeks, which has just been fantastic. If you're watching this for the first time, welcome. I am very glad that you are here. This is what I call a board game themed variety show where I simply talk about, new games that have come in, maybe review copies, maybe things I will be reviewing soon. Also talking about games that I played recently, trying to focus on some new hotness stuff, but also playing a variety of things from over the past couple of years. And then, of course, there is the question of the week segment where I invite you, the audience, to weigh in on a particular subject. And I'm really looking forward to seeing more participation in that segment going forward. So feel free to have your voices heard here on the channel. Let's see, along those lines, my wife and I actually last night filmed a video here in the treehouse about gaming for couples, and especially if you've got kind of varying interests between you and your spouse or significant other, partner, whatever, whoever they may be, just sort of find some common ground to be able to play some games together. So that'll probably come out in a couple weeks. I want to get that really nicely edited, and I want to kind of let the solo game stuff kind of run its course, and then I'll introduce that video here on the channel. Other than that, all right, folks, listen, from the last episode, I have been thoroughly schooled, and I apologize that I did not know that Donald Vaccarino was the designer of Dominion. I had a couple folks mention it in the comments. I had a couple people reach out to me privately and I can't believe you don't know that. And I get it, and I'm sorry. I will say this, I am terrible at names. And you have heard me over the past year or so of this show forgetting the names of games, forgetting the names of publishers, kind of goofing here and there. It's just that ability to kind of quickly hit my memory banks and remember a title. And it's not just games. It can be colleagues, it can even be people in town that I've gamed with. We had that game expo a couple of weeks ago, and I had a lot of people go, "Oh, hey Jeff, good to see you." And I'm like, I know your face, but damn if I can remember your name. So it's a me thing, and I'm sorry. I do the best I can. Dominion's a great game. I actually did sell my copy of it at that expo. I had Dominion, and I had 3 of the expansions, Seaside, Prosperity, and I think Kingdoms maybe was the name of the third one. Kingdoms was still in shrink, and all the cards and all the other boxes were still in their wrappers. It's a good game. I do think that it's kind of been surpassed by a lot of modern deck builders, and obviously we just never played our copy, and I was kind of tired of it taking up an entire cubby in the Kallax. I sold it for a really, really fair price, just kind of let it go. And I think the people who got it are going to enjoy it, which was, a really good thing to see. Anyways, so again, my apologies on that, and no disrespect to Donald. Other than that, the last thing I'll mention is that I'm going to try and focus here in the next couple of weeks on some reviews. I have a lot of stuff kind of stacking up on me. I do have some new stuff coming in due to this growth of the channel. I've had a couple of people reach out to me and offer to send me some review copies, some Kickstarter prototypes and such will be coming, and so I need to clear out my backlog and get to some new stuff. So I'm going to be trying to move away from some top 10s and stuff just for a little bit and focus on some reviews both here and on the Dice Tower. That'll be coming out soon. I think that's enough rambling for right now. Let me go ahead and get to some new games. All right, just 2 new games have come in the past week. The first one, both of these I purchased, but this one was just just bought this new from online. This is Mistborn. This is from John D. Clare, which I think is kind of funny. His name is John Clare, but everyone works the middle initial in because it sounds cooler. Anyways, this is from John D. Clare. This is a deck building game. Excuse me. This is based on the Brandon Sanderson fantasy novels, and I don't know if those novels are called Mistborn or if that's the name of the place. I don't know. I know that Sanderson's a very, very popular author. I'm not really big into fantasy novels as it is, and unfortunately, I don't get to read really much of anything these days that isn't a rule book or some news type stuff. I just don't have the time for it. But I know that he's a very popular author, and I will say that I've already played this. I don't know anything obviously about the theme, but you don't need to know anything about the theme. I'm sure I could have a greater connection with it if I understood the characters and the places or that kind of a thing. But this was a pretty neat game, and I will talk about this here in just a little bit. Mistborn. Up next, this was a Kickstarter that finally delivered, and this is Earth Abundance. And I'm kind of dramatically putting this stuff into the frame because I think this is everything that I got in this delivery. This is a box filled with mats. There was also an extra 6th player mat, so you can now play this at 6, which I'll never do. This entire box is deluxe components, and this is all of the expansion. This is it. It's not a necessarily very heavy box. It has a couple of boards in it, which of course are replicated by the mats here. It has about 80 or so cards in it, a couple other small components, and that's it. And what you're looking at is close to $200 of stuff. And I was kind of looking through this stuff and I'm thinking, I wasted my money because I've taken a look at these components. Even on the back of the box, I'll kind of show you. Maybe you can see this. There's little nicer looking trees than what the base game came with, which were little wooden components that kind of stacked up, and represented trees. Here they actually have like different colors and different shapes of trees, but they do not look as good in the box as they look on the box. They have very, very drab, sort of dark, lifeless colors. They're also plastic. Now they are apparently, what's it called? Post-consumer plastic. So I think it's all recycled plastic, which is great. But the whole idea behind the Earth game was that it was sustainable. It was all wooden components. There was no plastic in that thing at all. And now there is a giant box of plastic coins, plastic trees, plastic sprouts, which are just the same basic cube, but with a little leaf sticking up out of it. And just looking at these, I'm already quite disappointed with them. I really wish I hadn't bought these. The mats, I guess I wasn't expecting this giant box. There was really nothing wrong with the boards. The player boards being cards are kind of nice, although you don't typically pick them up. So, it makes it a little bit easier. A neoprene mat is easier to pick up cards off of, but I don't think that everything in that game needs to be a neoprene mat. And I am sure that these are not any better for the environment than even recycled plastic. But anyways, then there's the actual expansion, which I haven't played yet. We're actually going to play this tonight, I believe, my wife and I. But there's not a lot to it. It's a little board that you place next to your player board. It gives you a place to store sprouts, which you may not have a place to put on the map or on your board yet, but only in a certain way. And I'll explain that later. But I guess a problem with the game was that you may be gaining sprouts from certain actions and you have no place to put them, and so they get wasted. And so they kind of gave you this little storage bank that you can place them to be able to kind of keep those points. But again, not every action that would give you sprouts lets you actually store them, and it gives you this kind of whole criteria in this little rule book that came with this that kind of explained, when you can and when you can't bank those sprouts. And then it adds seeds. Seeds are a little difficult to get in the game, but you can cash them in to either get a bunch of resources or actually literally go fish through the deck to find a certain card that you might be looking for. And you can find a wide variety of cards. You can basically look for a feature of a card and go through the deck from the bottom to the top to find what you're looking for. And that's nice. And I've seen that out of a lot of these games. Ark Nova's newest expansion did that. Obviously, the Abundance expansion does that. When you've got these just massive decks of card games, you can go and try and find what you're specifically looking for instead of just constantly wasting action after action trying to find the card. But again, all of this for $200 doesn't really check out for me. So a little disappointed in that. Like I said, I'm going to play it tonight. I'm going to see if maybe there's some value in it that obviously I haven't seen yet, but we shall see. Anyways, that is it for new games. Let's go ahead and get to question of the week. This one, it's a doozy, folks. All right, question of the week. Like I said, this one, a bit of an interesting topic of discussion. I'm really glad we kind of got into this, and I'm really surprised at some of the responses that I got. The question from last week was, how do you feel about board games that use AI-generated art? And I will tell you, I really expected to see 2 or 3 distinct camps come out of this. I expected to see a bunch of, nope, screw AI art, we don't want anything to do with it, it can go to hell. I expected to see a little bit of, it's fine, what's the big deal, don't really care. And then I expected to see a majority mostly of, it's a gray area. I really only got 1 maybe on each end of that spectrum, maybe 2 on the very accepting side. And most folks really did kind of fall into that middle grouping. I also did see where there's still a little bit of maybe confusion as to just what really is happening behind the scenes with AI art or AI generated content in general. I will say that I don't know everything about it, but I do follow some social media. I do follow some channels. The whole writer's strike in Hollywood from maybe 2 years ago or so was all about AI content. And so I have kind of followed some of that stuff. I do understand a little bit of what is going on, and we'll kind of get into some of that as we go. Anyways, let's go ahead and get to some answers. Up first was Rentless, who said that as an artist himself, this is a tough question to answer. He said he's okay with first-time designers using AI art, but wants to see transparency, make it clear that it's AI. He said his biggest gripe with AI is the dishonesty behind it. Yeah, and that's what we're going to see a little bit as we go forward. I see it a lot in AI videos, like on shorts and such on Facebook or YouTube, where people are making, it's fairly clear that it's AI, but a lot of people don't know that they're looking at AI, which is maybe a little bit sad, but it's also the world that we live in. And yeah, there's just a lot of dishonesty to that stuff. But we're going to see more of that going forward, especially this concept of making sure that you're being transparent about it. So on that note, Teshra said that he feels that this topic has become too binary. He feels that there are shades of gray to the idea. He spoke a bit about artists who are talented but not creative, emulating the styles of other artists, just as AI art does today. He said that the industry should require regulation, identifying a line where AI art too closely replicates the work of an artist and thus becomes plagiarism. He closed by pointing out that board game designs frequently copy mechanisms of other games. Why isn't that as problematic as copying art? Now, first of all, I will say that I paraphrase some of the things that Teshra said here, and I may have even kind of made it sound more in one way or the other than he meant to, so feel free to go and check that full comment out yourself. I will also add, though, that the comment you made about, there needs to be regulation, and you think to some extent maybe there is, I would say that there is not. There really is not regulation. The only thing that we've seen is companies that have kind of placed their own stop guards on what they're going to let their AI do, and we'll get into that here just a little bit. I do think, though, that the topic of, hey, look, board game mechanisms are copied, so how is that really different from, replicating or emulating someone else's art? That's an interesting topic. I don't have a clear answer for that. I can't say I have a clear opinion on it, but it does kind of show a different way of thinking about it. So I thought that was pretty interesting. JW Spiker said he's completely fine with a game using AI art if it's the only way the game can get published. He agrees that they should be upfront about their use of AI art, but otherwise he's fine with it, saying that it's like GPS versus reading a paper map. There is a place for both. And it's kind of funny that you brought this up, because it's actually the catalyst for this entire discussion, and we'll get into that here in a little bit. Wayne Kruger said that AI is here to stay. He said that you're going to see more and more of it used in this industry, from rulebooks to translations and more. He said that while he'd certainly prefer man-made art, AI art is fine if it's made clear that it's been utilized and if original artists are credited and receive compensation. He said he thinks AI goes wrong when it's trained off of other artists who don't receive credit or compensation. And that really kind of hits the nail on the head, because that doesn't happen. So there is no credit to the authors that those AI algorithms have learned from to be able to generate that art. And there is certainly no compensation to those artists. And again, that is really, I think, one of the most controversial aspects of the entire topic, is that these AI algorithms have learned from other artists what a person looks like, what a dog looks like. I mean, just millions and millions and millions of images have been absorbed into these AI algorithms, and they have learned this is what animals look like, trains, cars, people, you name it. And now you're telling it, okay, give me an image based on thousands and thousands and millions of other images that you've seen that other people have created or photographed or illustrated or whatever. Make it look like I want it to look like. But those people who contributed that content get no recognition, get no compensation. They've had no choice as to whether or not they get to kind of contribute to that development. So that isn't happening. Like I said, that's one of the big, sort of issues with this topic. Yukon Zach had an interesting approach. He said that a game that is heavily themed would benefit more from a human artist, citing Flamecraft as an example, but that perhaps using AI art for more abstract games is okay. I thought that was an interesting idea. I didn't really think about it in that aspect. If I think about, I don't know. I can't think of a game that would sort of fit into that umbrella necessarily. I mean, I think about Nebula. So Nebula is an abstract, sort of a pattern building game I've talked about here. Think about Azul too, where there's not, there's art. Clearly there is art there, and clearly there is the inklings of a theme. So if I needed to generate an image of a universe or a galaxy or, a star field or something, a distant planet, whatever it may be, is that okay to use art? Or to use AI, or, same thing. Could an artist still do a better job of it? Should an artist still be given the chance to do a better job of it? Am I using AI to replicate images that NASA took? Whatever. Although a lot of times NASA gives away its images. You can just go and download them. So there's that. Anyways, it's an interesting angle to take for sure. Just Joe Blogs took a very unique angle to this conversation. I thought this was quite interesting. He said that many years ago, analog artists like painters or film-based photographers argued that digital media wasn't real art, that if you could change colors or tones or edit art in digital ways, that it wasn't truly art. He said, imagine how those folks would feel today. He added that he used to be against AI art, but sees it now as a foundation to start the creative process, adding too that if it's your only means to get a game produced, go for it, but be upfront about it as well. He also made a pretty funny comment about how AI art is often inconsistent and terrible as it is, but pointed out that Dominion accomplished this just fine years before there was AI art. and you're right. Dominion has often kind of been mocked for just the terrible art on those cards, and I've seen it. It's true, and that was not done with AI at all. Now, also, I had Theme Park Mania was a board game I've only talked about once, I think, here on the channel. I already got rid of my copy of it, and it's supposed to kind of look like a theme park, but when you actually started looking at the art details, it was clearly AI generated. The text was just these weird blobs on the tiles. You couldn't read anything. It almost looked like it was some weird hieroglyphics, and it looked terrible, and it was because of AI art. So it's like, how are folks even getting by with this? And I'll even talk about that more here in a little bit. So Mike Heller was on the other side of the scale. He said that AI art for him is an immediate boycott, that he doesn't support companies like Awaken Realms as they have been squirrely about their use of AI-generated content. He said if a company knowingly uses AI art, they don't need his money. And you know what? Hey, I respect that opinion. And it's not an uncommon one either. I do wonder though, and it's kind of, we've already seen some of this, and we'll probably see a little bit more of it, is, how do you feel if you know that there's a great game out there in someone's mind that they cannot afford to get to the table because it just requires too much art content, which is expensive, and so that game just never comes out. It never gets made because that person couldn't get the art behind it. That's the part where I kind of go, I don't know. I just don't know. C.R. Pohl admitted that he wasn't familiar with the conflict over AI art and suggested that as technology is used in all aspects of board game creation, why shouldn't it be used to create art as well? He said that as long as the same ethics, legalities, etc. are followed by the AI that a human would need to follow, there's no reason for it to be boycotted or shunned. And this kind of goes back to what I talked about a few moments ago, in that the ethics aren't being followed. There is no real concept for ethics. There is, as I said, there's kind of stop guards put in place by the company or companies or whatever who are sort of putting that AI algorithm out there to be used. I have seen, AI generators that say, you can't create gore or violence, but that's something that can be easily danced over. You can skip over that fairly easily and make something look like it's, either a precursor to violence or leading to violence, or even just something that generates hate and animosity in someone's mind. And again, you're kind of skirting over that issue. And it's the challenge of this topic. It really is, in that, you made a comment about technologies being used in all aspects of board games. Sure, but even those factories in China, another big topic of discussion right now with all these tariffs and everything going on, you still got people working that. You still have a human element to it. The people who are working those factories. We have seen videos from publishers of workers who are working the punch machines, and they're collating everything into the copies of the box, and they're putting in all the pieces and putting the lids on and shrink wrapping everything. And there's a human element to it. So what you're kind of doing is saying, well, hey, look, I'm going to just not use the human element for the art, although I have done some AI work myself a little bit, and it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to kind of convince the machine to generate the thing that you're looking for. And that kind of takes me into to my stance on this, which I'm in that middle camp. I don't like AI for a lot of reasons, but I also think it can't be avoided, and I think that it can have some benefits. So I will tell you that the intro of my I made you a mixtape video where I kind of had like some stock photos. All that was AI generated because I couldn't afford to go out and pay for stock images to make that intro. And a lot of those things require very expensive memberships to be able to get the resolution that you need for these images. You have to pay higher membership costs. They make it very hard to unsubscribe. There's a lot of predatory practice to those companies as well. And I kind of like to just eschew all of that. And you can get AI. You can use AI generators for free. I do have a Microsoft 365 account, which I use for, a lot of stuff with work and home use. And so you can use a Microsoft AI generator, which you kind of get like a couple credits you get to use each month or something like that. So I used it for the intro to that. I used it for an image in The Last Command preview video of a guy laying on a couch. And I also tried to use it just this past week for the thumbnail image of my newest solo list, the games that did not make the cut. And this one's kind of funny for me because I was trying to get an image of a pair of scissors cutting from the left side of a piece of paper, and I went through a couple different websites, a couple different algorithms, tried a variety of different scripts, could not get any of these things to make the image that I wanted. And so I finally broke out my camera and a piece of paper and some scissors, and I made it myself. And that's the part of me that I just find so fascinating, is that as far as I'm concerned, AI art is stupid. I mean, these AI algorithms are some of the dumbest things I've ever seen. I had a manager at work create a scope of work for a contractor for what I do, and he used AI to write the scope of work, and I read it, and it was just the dumbest thing I have ever read. I lost all respect for that manager because he did not come to the expert and say, hey, can you help me do this? No, he just went to AI to do it. And even the contractor came back and said, this doesn't make any sense. Like, none of this is best practice. What are you doing? So we had to fix that mess. So if anything, I will say this: if you are designing a game and you're using AI and you actually make something that looks passable, shit, man, good for you, because I sure can't figure it out. I have so many times had to either Photoshop stuff, the image of the guy on the couch from The Last Command review, he had 3 feet, and the 1 foot was heavily deformed, and I had to Photoshop the crap out of that thing to try and make it look passable, and even then I only flashed it on the screen for a fraction of a second because it still looked bad. So I don't know. What triggered all this was that I was approached by the designer of a game named Beasts and Diplomacy. It is a rather big looking card game. Lots of stuff going on in this. Not a deck builder necessarily, but there's this kind of, like you're getting cards out to generate effects. I can't remember all the details of it. I did kind of watch a video of it. It looks really interesting. And he told me right up front when he first reached out to me that this game almost completely relies on AI art. It has over 400 art assets, and he's an independent designer. He does have a publisher that he's working through. I didn't recognize the name of it, and this is the only way that he can afford to get this game made. That getting that much art generated by someone on a commission would just be impossible to afford. And the one thing that I don't know, this is my own personal just lack of knowledge, is if you're pitching an idea for a game, and maybe I've got just an amazing game, but I have no art direction on it. Well, I am not an artist at all. Visual media for me, drawing and that kind of, I've always been terrible at it since I was a child. Just all of my pictures from my youth look terrible. I've tried to do like pencil renderings of cars, and nothing ever comes out right. I have no idea how to do like the idea of 3D and sort of the shading and the angles and how things sort of wrap around. Anyways, I'm terrible at it. And I would think though that if I was pitching a game, and it was a rock solid game, but I have no art direction, wouldn't that publisher help me? Like if they believe in the game and they think that, yeah, this is a great idea and we're going to work with this artist and get all your, isn't that how that would work? Unless that publisher is so small that they can't afford it either, in which case maybe just keep shopping for a better publisher. I don't know, but I can also imagine that if you are a small independent designer, getting someone to say, yeah, hey, we're going to, we'll back this, we're going to go with this, we're going to give you a shot, but yeah, we can't afford it and we might be your only chance to ever get this game made. Again, maybe they're just kind of stuck with this idea of AI art. Now, in the defense of this designer, and I don't remember his name, and I don't even want to quite share it right now. Anyways, they are going to be very, very open and transparent about this. They're making sure that people know about it. They've already got a Kickstarter page kind of put together. It's not live yet, but they're open about that in the description of this game on that Kickstarter campaign. And he told me, make sure if you're going to do a video for this, make sure you tell folks about it. We want to wear this on our sleeve and make sure that everyone is aware. And we know that he knows he's going to get some taunts over it. He's going to get some people upset about it, but as far as he's concerned, it is his only option. So again, I don't know exactly where I stand on this. It's a very, very difficult subject, and I think we're all just going to have to kind of see how this evolves going forward. And that's maybe all I can say about it right now. And I appreciate everyone kind of weighing in. I'm interested in seeing, like I said, the breadth of responses that I got. And we'll just kind of have to kind of see how this goes. Let's go ahead and get to some recently played games. All right, sorry, I had to take a little break there. If you didn't quite catch it at the end of that last clip, a leaf blower started to fire up right outside this house. We had someone come in and put mulch all around the place. I didn't know they were coming. That wasn't part of the plan. And so I was suddenly trying to figure out how to quickly end that clip without being too abrupt, and I'm not sure if I succeeded. Anyways, I hate leaf blowers. I hate them so much. All right, so some recently played games. I've got a couple games, mostly that we have not talked about here on the channel before, so that's kind of exciting. One of them, or two of them, are fairly new. One of them is conveniently 10 years old. So let's go ahead and get to it. Up first, so my buddy Chris Mutton, who I've chatted about in the past, finally joined me here, and we played From the Moon. This is from La Boîte de Jeu. The designer is Johannes Guppy. That's actually my problem with names too, is knowing how to pronounce them. But he has made games such as Rauha, Faraway, and Orichalcum, as well as some others. And this is a game that him and I have been chatting about playing for quite a while. A couple of months we've been trying to get together, and finally this past week I was like, Chris, you're coming over. We're going to play this. Let's get it done. You pick the day and we'll make it happen. And we did. So this is a game about sort of expanding operations on the moon. It's really just kind of a point salad game. There's a lot of different ways to get points, but it uses sort of worker placement elements similar to games like Everdell and even Andromeda's Edge, where you're placing out workers, taking actions, and eventually retrieving those workers. But there are other actions that you can take. So it's not just that worker placement. There are other things that you might be doing on your turn. You have a couple of actions available to you. One of them is placing out a worker. And what you're doing is you're trying to build buildings. You're trying to get resources. These workers are rovers, and you have an astronaut in each rover. The rovers are just your player color, but the astronauts are blue, gray, or black, and you're using those to get resources like it's steel, polymer, and water, I believe. There's also a food resource that you cannot just easily collect. You have to do a little bit more effort to get the food resource, but you can grow greenhouses. It's one of the actions you can take, is growing greenhouses, even upgrading those greenhouses to generate more food. There are buildings that you can build. You have a couple on your player board, and there's a bunch of different variety to this, but everyone has the same variety. So what you do is you have a bunch of different buildings. One player at the start of the game sort of randomly chooses the buildings, and then everyone retrieves those same buildings from their stash and puts them in their player board. So you've got variety to each game, but everyone is working with the same stuff. Now there is a little asymmetry in kind of these corporations that you choose from at the beginning of the game, and you get one unique building that you can build, kind of like Deep Shelf, but they're not as impactful to the game. So they kind of give you a little bit of a thing maybe to focus on, but other than that, it's fairly even keel as far as what you're doing. Now, there are 3 missions. There are 3 kind of like spaceships that you're working together to try and get these missions launched. Once you build everything that's on that ship can launch. And once the 3rd ship launches, that triggers the end of the game. And then you also have, of course, this action where you are retrieving your workers. Now, you may have put more workers into those rovers. You may have put more astronauts into those rovers. The astronauts can be upgraded. So again, there's a lot of things that you can do. You have a lot of actions available to you, and you're sort of doing as much as you can until you just run out of resources, run out of energy, run out of whatever you could do, and you finally do a reclaim action. You pick all your rovers back up. You have a little bit of an income that you kind of get to trigger off based on buildings that you may have built. Any of your greenhouses will produce food. And then there is the Uwe Rosenberg-esque idea of feeding all of your astronauts. And of course, if you cannot do that, you lose a whole bunch of points. The thing with this was that the rulebook wasn't great. And in fact, I read the rulebook on it a long time ago. I did not remember any of it. I did finally sit down and watch it's not We Game Together, but Monique and Naveen have a video out with kind of a teach and then a long playthrough. I obviously don't watch the playthroughs, but the teach was fairly effective, at least getting me the idea of the game, and then I kind of used the rulebook to just catch up on all the little loose details, although even then, the rulebook left a lot of things out. There's a lot of symbology in this game and the various actions that you're taking. Some of those costs of trying to work towards those missions will actually require you to literally untrain one of your astronauts, even destroy one of your buildings, but it doesn't really tell you if that building comes out of the game. Does it just come back to your player board and you can rebuild it? It's very unclear as to how all that works. And so that was a little frustrating. But the game itself was pretty fine. It was a straightforward game. Once we kind of understood the 5 or 6 actions that you get to take, there wasn't really a lot of animosity. There wasn't a lot of confusion. There is a really nice timing element to this. So there's a lot of, you get kind of discounts for doing something maybe early. There's a lot of, okay, well, if I go ahead and get this building, that's going to set me up for the end game scoring, and then maybe you can't get to that. There are some public buildings that you can build to give you end game points. Those missions kind of have a majority type scoring aspect. So if you have contributed more to a mission, you will get extra points when that mission launches. And they're big numbers. It's like 25 points for first place and 15 points for second place. There's also these kind of milestones that you're achieving throughout the game, just getting these tokens at the end of the game. Whoever has the most milestones gets 25 points. And so it's like big numbers. There's a lot going on. We both passed, I think, 100 points in this, and at the end game scoring, it was nice. I liked it. I don't really know though that I felt like I was building any kind of a lunar base. I didn't, all the components. The theme is there in visual, but it could be any real sort of city building game. The income actions didn't feel as interesting as I like an income action to be. Some of the buildings that you build may give you a little bit of an income. I was getting 2 resources and a couple of food, and I would get to add to my battery track and recharge my battery each time I did the income. That was kind of it, and it didn't really get much more powerful than that throughout the game. But there definitely is that efficiency aspect of, okay, again, I can spend these resources and get that building built, and I'm done, I'm out. But if I instead maybe go and build this, well, then that's going to trigger a couple of resources that I can gain, maybe accomplishing a mission or working towards a mission. I get a little bit of reward for that. And then I can use that to take the action that I was originally going to take. I still get the same result, but I've actually gotten a little bit more done because I just picked a different order of operations. And I really do like that in gaming. And this was one where, I went a good 3 or 4 more turns before my first reclaim of workers versus what Chris did. He got like 3 actions and then reclaimed. I got 6 actions or so and then reclaimed. Now, the interesting thing with that is that there are a couple different ways that the game can end. You can get all those missions accomplished, or there is this kind of progress track. Every time you reclaim your workers, you move up that track, and if you would ever move off of that track, you trigger the end of the game, even if the missions are not finished. And so I did have to be mindful of, okay, yeah, you want to play efficiently, but make sure you're still getting those points. Make sure that you're contributing towards your own end game, because even someone who's maybe not as efficient could end the game early. And, if they've just amassed more points, they will obviously still be able to win. And so that was an interesting, sort of challenge to balance that. It's a nice game. It's fine. The astronauts in the rovers are very, very fiddly. They're really small little astronauts with little small bases. They kind of plug into the rover. The upgrades to your astronauts are these little tags that you slip into a backpack, literally on the miniature. But they're small. I mean, they're small little pieces, and so you're trying to slide a little piece into the astronaut. The astronaut falls out of the rover, and you're trying to plug them all back in. You have a couple times like just stop it. Just get it on the go away. Leave me alone. That could have been done better, maybe, but that was really the only issue besides, like I said, some ambiguity in the rules, which was a little disappointing. I'm going to have to try and go do some research and find out answers to those questions. But other than that, it was a fine game. I just don't know how much this is going to get played. There's a lot of games doing the same thing, like the Everdells, like the Andromeda's Edge, although this one I kind of felt like a lot of the actions that you were taking, there was a reason to take them, whereas I feel like in Andromeda's Edge, it's only that reclaim action that is kind of fun. Everything else is just waiting to do that next action. This thing, I think, you had more purpose for each one of your actions, and there was that idea of, well, shit, I need to real quick reorganize and get this done before my opponent does, because I got to get that mission completed before they do, or they're going to win the majority. And again, it's a 10-point swing. I need to get that. Even though I felt like I was playing it more efficiently, our scores were still fairly tight, which was good. I mean, I didn't, you don't want to just completely blow away the score on that, because then you don't really know if you had a good balanced experience. Anyways, a neat game. Glad I got to play it. I do think I want to try and check this out with maybe my wife. I think it works fine at 2 players. You get a larger environment at 3 players, but the tiles are always the same. They may just be reorganized differently on the in your play area. But yeah, it was okay. Nothing that I would write home about. But it was a fine game from the moon. One last game we played, and I won't get into this one. We did play another game of Patterns. I've talked about this one quite a bit. Loving this game, and it's definitely a game where having a little bit of experience really, really helps. This one I did kind of blow Chris out of the water with it, but I wasn't surprised by that because I played it enough times and I've kind of seen the strategy to it. I did try to kind of help him out, like make sure he understood what options he had. But definitely a game where, man, as you start to really understand the cunning moves of this, you can play it kind of cutthroat. And it's just a lot of fun. Plays very, very quickly. Loving that game. The next thing that we played kind of middle of last week, I convinced my wife to try out this game. Do you know what this is? Because there's nothing, I don't even know if I have it upright. I don't. There's nothing on this cover to tell you what this game is, but this is Champions of Midgard. This is the Jarl edition, and so it has the Deep Mountains, the Valhalla expansions, and a couple of other goodies in it. Another worker placement game that I've known about for a while. I've had this game for a while. We haven't played it in a long time, actually. I think since maybe 2022 or 2023. It's been a while. worker placement game where you're trying to collect resources. You're trying to collect Vikings, which are sort of represented by dice. And then you're going to fight monsters. You've got a troll that attacks your village every round. Someone needs to go and deal with the troll. There are some draugrs that, sort of undead that you can go and fight. Just sort of randomly choose to go fight them. But then there are also some monsters on distant islands, and you actually have to travel to those islands using boats, which you've got public boats that you can kind of rent, or you can even buy your own boat to have for the game, which will give you some in-game scoring. But you have to load the Vikings and food on that boat. Both take up an equal amount of space. And then you're going to these distant islands and using these Vikings to attack these monsters. And it uses this very easy system where you're rolling this dice. They will give you hits or shielding or both or none. And each monster has an attack value and a defense value. On each sort of round of combat, you have, you can sort of build up hits on the monster, but then each hit that it gets to do that you do not shield removes one of your dice. So you're kind of chipping away at its health while the monster is chipping away at your Viking clan. Now, in the original game, when you lost dice, you just lost the dice. They kind of went away and you were sad and that was it. With the Valhalla expansion, they die and they go to Valhalla and you get a little token almost representing their soul, if you will. And then you can spend those in Valhalla to get Vikings blessings, or I think they're called, well, I know they're blessings, but you're getting cards that may give you some resources. They may actually give you back some new Vikings. There's this element where you have a leader die with the Valhalla expansion, and if they die, you don't get anything. But you can then use a card, a blessing card, to rejuvenate your leader. And then there are also some epic monsters literally in Valhalla that you can fight using these tags, and they give you a bunch of in-game scoring and such. The Valhalla expansion is often considered an essential expansion. It makes the game so much better. It adds so much more ideas and sort of strategies to the game, because sometimes you're literally going to recruit Vikings with the intention of losing them in battle so that you can then send the souls to Valhalla and beat that epic monster, which is kind of neat. Like, it's this neat idea of being able to, do extra things with those characters, with those Vikings, with those resources, whatever. Anyways, the rulebook was a little bit more difficult to get into than I remembered. It took me a little while to kind of remember how to play this. I think my wife had a slightly uncomfortable teach from me on this one. And I also had some pretty bad luck. I had a certain round where I went up against the troll and the monster, and I lost everything. I lost all my Vikings. I got nothing out of it. But there is a kind of a weird set collection aspect at the end of this game where the monsters have kind of a color, almost like a suit, red, yellow, blue. And each set of them just give you points at the end of the game. It is a little bit non-thematic in that aspect. I don't like that part of the game. But my set collection actually gave me the win on this, which was just kind of luck, really, at that point. Anyways, one of my favorite games. There is a 10th anniversary edition of this, which just came through Kickstarter not that long ago. It was unrealistically expensive. I did not back any part of it because this doesn't really get played enough to justify like that $400 or $500 price tag. But I am certainly happy with this edition, which I've kind of blinged out a little bit with like metal coins and a couple things. Anyways, that is Champions of Midgard. Really glad I got to play that one. Again, last one that I have played just the other day, as I mentioned, is Mistborn. This is a deck building game from John DeClaire, as I mentioned. And as far as a deck building game goes, this one's really straightforward. You have a small deck of cards you start off with. You all have the same abilities. Some of those cards will just give you money, and a lot of them kind of give you basic abilities based on 8, well, you only get 4, but there are 8 different metals in this game. You kind of have your own little board in front of you. It's called a training board, and it has tokens for these 8 metals across the top. And then there's also a little track where you have a little cube that you're moving up that track. At the beginning of every one of your turns, you bump up that track. So you are naturally progressing the game. You're naturally getting better as you move up this track. At the beginning of the game, you can burn one of these metals to trigger the effect of a card. So if you're putting out a card that says burn brass to be able to get some extra money, or to be able to work towards a mission, or to get combat points, attack points that you can use against another player. And then as that track continues to progress, you're going to start being able to use more and more metals. So eventually you can burn 2 metals. You can burn 3 metals, up to 4. You can also flare a medal. So if you have used all the medals that you're able to, you can flare a medal to still get its effect, but then it flips over, and you're later on going to have to burn a card, just basically discard a card corresponding to that medal to be able to flip it back over and make it available for use again. And then you also have player abilities, and as you advance up that track, you start to activate those player abilities. The first one is unique to your character. There's only 4 characters in the game, and then the second and third abilities are the same for every player. The cards that you're buying cards from the market, just like every other deck builder. They go into your discard pile, just like every other deck builder. And you got 2 different types of cards. You have action cards, again, based on those medals. But some of those action cards can actually be spent as burning a medal without burning the medal from your board, which potentially gives you extra actions. Also, those cards that you're buying have 2 abilities. You have a top ability that only requires burning 1 medal to use. But if you are able to burn additional medals, either by using cards, or there is even a wild medal, which is very hard to get to, and I have no idea how it's pronounced. It's atium or atium. We have no idea. I'm sure folks who read the books know. But anyways, you can use it as a wild resource to trigger the extra abilities on these cards. And that's it in a nutshell. You've got attacking, you've got these 3 mission cards that you're able to sort of progress on, and then there is a special card called a dominance card. It's in the market, this thick deck of cards that you can purchase. And if you are ever able to spend 4 of the atium on that card, you immediately win the game. If you get to the top of all these mission tracks, you immediately win the game. And if you are the last player standing, so you're attacking other players, possibly taking out their ally cards, you have other cards you can buy that kind of go sideways, and they give you maybe some ongoing abilities. They kind of work like the bases in Star Realms, so they stay out from round to round. But you're able to attack them, you're able to attack players. Some of those ally cards act as a defense where you have to take them out first. Again, just like the bases in Star Realms. And so again, there's a lot of commonality. There's a lot of things that we've seen in other deck builders. I did like this aspect of I don't have to play the fighty game, so I can play this with my wife, and we're not just trying to hammer at each other. We can just try and focus on racing up these missions. You get benefits for climbing them faster than your opponents. I also got some cards out that let me progress quicker on my training track, which kind of let me get a little ahead of the curve. I really, really enjoyed this, and while it follows a lot of common deck building tropes, this idea of burning medals to be able to trigger actions, and then of course trying to build yourself a deck that is focused on just a couple of those medals. I obviously focused very hard on the training aspects of just moving up these cards, and that worked out for me. I did win the game by racing up those tracks. Now, I do kind of wish that those mission cards were more interesting. They just have a very basic title. Like I said, there's just it almost looks like an Excel chart. You're just moving up these rows. When you get to certain rows, you get a benefit for being the first player to be there, and then there's also a benefit just for getting there. So, even if you're not the first person, you're still getting a couple benefits, but the person who goes up quicker gets more. But that was it. There was no unique way of climbing those charts. You literally just get an icon that says advance on a track, and you can pick any track you want. So it doesn't even matter which mission you're going for. There's a couple different ones in the box, but the only thing that matters is the rewards that you get for climbing up that track. And so even as it was, we got one out that was a fighting mission. As you climbed up it, you got to deal damage to your opponent, and I took that one out and swapped it for a different mission so that, again, we wouldn't have to play a heavy combat game. So I wish there was a little bit more to that, but generally I really did enjoy this. I don't know who any of the characters are. I don't know the lore of this game, but you don't need to. I certainly enjoyed the experience without knowing that. Just a very fun game. That was Mistborn by John D. Clare. All right, that's it for recently played games. The only topic to get into is the question for next week. So, I mentioned at the start of the episode that my wife and I put together sort of a 2-player a video about gaming as a couple, and we talked a little bit in that video about how we first got into gaming. And so I'm going to ask that question for next week. What game got you into gaming? What game started it all for you into this hobby? We may have touched upon some similar subjects back in the past, but let's go ahead and revisit it, especially hopefully with some new folks joining us here on the channel. That's the question for next week. Thank you so much for watching. This week, episode 59 is in the books, folks, and I will talk to you again soon. Thanks for watching. Cheers.